Thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce to you Zhuoran Chen. So Zhuoran gained her MA in education from the University of Sheffield in 2020. She built up a strong research interest in early childhood education during that time. Now she is a PhD student at the University of Nottingham. Her doctoral research aims to investigate young children's gender construction in Chinese transnational families in the UK, with the hopes to contribute to knowledge on using child-centered methods to explore gender-relevant topics with young children, especially in cases where young children are experiencing cultural differentiations and constructing gender. So, Zoran, you're up next, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Ralph. It is really nice to meet you all today. And actually, I think the conversation that you just had with Bill kind of inspired me to think further about how how is it possible for me to try to further my research in the second or third generations of Chinese people here in the UK. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, good. So hi everyone, my name is Zhuoran and it's really nice to meet you all today. And I'm going to talk about my PhD research project. The title of my research is Young Children's Gender Constructions in Chinese Transnational Families in the UK. Basically, my research aims to find out how the experiences living in the UK has shaped young children's understanding of what gender is. And the reason why I want to do this topic, to do these studies, mainly comes from like three general reasons. So the first one is because my personal context. So before I came to the UK in 2019, I've been living in China for the like 20 years of my life in China. And I've always wondering what life would look like in another country, because I grew up in I would say, a traditional Chinese family. And my parents raised me in a way, I would say, in a gender stereotyped way, because they've always say things like, "Oh, girls should do this, and you should not do that, and you should behave in this way," etc., etc. And even though I do have access to like social platforms, and I can see how things are going on outside my own context, it's still very interesting for me to imagine and to see maybe one day I could have the opportunity to study abroad. And one thing really got me interested is the way how people expressing themselves, especially when they're doing their gender in the UK here, because things like LGBTQ is still something that will be frowned upon in the mainland China, especially where I can come from. So after I came here, I was just amazed by the diverse way how people are doing things. And when I was doing my master's degree, as mentioned before, I really start to grow an interest in early child education, is and because I feel like I can see how my previous life experiences guide me or lead me to the place where I am right now. And also, as an international student myself, I've always wondering, what if I grew up in the UK and not in China? Will that change my understanding of my life and also my understanding of gender as well? So I think that's how I ended up like doing this research. But of course, you cannot just do you do a research and just because you like it? Um, so my rationale for this research project are mainly could be like roughly divided into three reasons. So the first of all is Chinese people are actually underrepresented in the educational research within the UK. Um, and I would say, as a minority ethnic group in the UK, Chinese people or British Chinese community, Chinese people in the UK, they're often known as like hardworking, and it's also because the way how Chinese society perceive the way people should contribute to their own community or society. It's in most the case we do not think that it is a good thing to bother others, and so that's why I would say in many cases, Chinese people are more likely to be overlooked because they often are the good behaved citizens who do not make many troubles. And the second thing is topics around gender is actually better discussed in transnational studies on young children's experiences in the UK. As Ralph mentioned before, actually there are many studies on young children's experiences in the UK, but they're more more focusing on aspects like academic achievements or academic performance of Chinese students in the UK schools, and there are also studies that have looked at the identity issues, like Raf mentioned. There are a group of studies who specifically look at the identities issues brought by the dual living experiences for those Chinese people. Last but least, yes, so there actually a lack of young children's voices in those transnational studies because the way how young children often being interpreted is as like less knowledgeable people compared to adults, and they are really young by their age, and so that's why in many cases children often seen as the passive receiver of family migration decisions, like in many cases like for example maybe there's a family who wants to move from China to the UK, and parents may not seem to ask may not ask the opinion of their children because they as parents they are the guardians of their children, and those young children are actually depend on their parents, so they do not have much say in terms of making decisions on things like that. And so because in the early years of life, children spend a lot of time with their parents. So I've looked at the parenting in both mainland and Chinese families and Chinese families in the UK. So so generally speaking, but I'm not trying to overgeneralize Chinese families. Is big. So the way how Chinese people conceive conceive the way that parents should raise children are based on the core or the I would say one of the important values, which is Confucianism or the collectivist ideology, which means think that an individual is seen as a part of a social network. Um, so Chinese parents in mainland areas who hold a belief on Confucianism or the collective ideology, they tend to raise their children in a way that they think they will make a contribution to their community or society in the future. And after the opening up and reform policy in China during I was in 1990s, there are more and more Chinese parents who chose to adopt the Western style of parenting. So they're more likely to treat their children in a more like equal way, and they will put their children's needs as one of their priorities. But still, it also depends on the area that you grow up. So those parents, they in previous studies, many researchers have found that those parents who have treated their children in a more like equal or more liberal way are more likely to be well educated. So and with more with better economic socioeconomic status. So that's to say that those cases, they often exist in more developed areas or in like big cities like Shanghai or Beijing, but still in the less developed areas, parents, they may still have the typical or traditional ways of raising children. And and another thing is the Chinese society still holds a rather gender stereotype understanding of gender. So researchers like Yu or Yang, they found that the Chinese government have been calling for more male teachers in early education settings to fix the illness of um, boys being feminized, because early early years education or early years settings are known for being dominant by female practitioners. So those Chinese officials, they think that if we can bring more male teachers in the settings, then they can set up a role model for the boys. So boys will be boys. And however, on researchers have who have looked at Chinese families who like that of sorry who have already migrated to the UK. They've they've noticed that children who grow up in those families, they can actually act as shapers or resistors to their social life, because usually those children's parents, they tend to arrange their social life, like maybe they will put extra like homework after school to their children, and they think they will restrict their children's life, like they should be home like before 12 or 11 or something like that. But those children, they tend to resist all the I would say all the rules and regulations that are set by their parents. Sometimes they even feel more powerful, I say, because not all the parents who can actually speak English in a very like fluent way. So somehow the power relationship between those children and their parents are shift in some cases, and can they can actually do the reverse work. They can influence their parents, and they can act as the cultural brokers, because they can help their parents to fit in with the community, or they can help their parents to overcome the language barriers they have. And for for British Chinese parents, or like the second generations or the third generations Chinese, they have reported to the researchers that they actually think they are accommodate their traditional Chinese values with the wider cultural growth and the norms very well, and they believe that they are less gender stereotype or less conservative parents compared to those who are living in the mainland. Um, and another part about the studies on Chinese people in the UK is there are two main strains about Chinese people. Chinese people in the research. So the first one is those studies, they've looked at Chinese people who are the second generation or the third generation in of the migrants, and so, for example, there are researchers who have looked up the British Chinese community's experiences during the COVID time, because there were a lot of like attacks occurred during that time, and also there are studies that looked at the impact of British Chinese culture and the effect of mental issues on the family, because there are a lot of Chinese or British born Chinese people, they feel like they've been struggling with the problems or the issues that brought by their dual identities. But as far as I know, is I don't think people who come from mainland China are allowed to have like dual passports. I think we only accept one, either Chinese or British passport. And there are also studies that looked at Chinese children who have been adopted and growing up in the British families. And the second strand is there are a lot of research has been conducted on Chinese students from early years to the university levels. So they've collected and do some quantitative studies on the academic achievements for those Chinese of those Chinese students. And actually, there are some studies that find that British Chinese students sometimes are experience the hidden racist in the school class settings. Like I put here some practitioners, they've said like British Chinese boys are just naturally good and girls are passive and repressed. And there are also studies have pointed out that or criticized that the way how those Chinese parents treat their children to get higher academic achievements are problematic. And among all those studies, actually young children's voices or perspectives are less studied, because as I mentioned before, and the way how we perceive children as less knowledgeable or less reliable compared to adults is will affect the way how we invite children in the research. So previously, there are a lot of studies doing research on children, but my belief is that we should do research with children, because I perceive children as capable of like making sense, and they are also capable of involving in the research. And because of the way how young children have been regarded based on the less knowledgeable conceptions, and young children in transnational or migration studies, they've often been placed in a like passive in a passive place. So you can see there are a lot of studies looking at refugee children or trafficked or separated children. And then there are many studies who actually bringing young children's voices into the research. And another thing is those children's their transnational experiences, they are often interpreted from researchers or adults' perspectives, which means still we try to those researchers, they try to interpret those young children's experiences from their own perspective, not not in a way that they can actually express themselves. So with that concept in mind, there are actually a growing group of studies that focusing on studies with children in the transnational family studies. And because I want to investigate how those children can understand or make sense of what gender is, I I I also believe that children can perform their gender actively. So there are some studies show that actually boys, they are trying to engage in like masculine play when they're being watched, but then engaged in like family play when they're left alone. So that's something those researchers call like appropriate play. So actually that's something that we can understand, that people or young children, they do not necessarily follow certain gender roles or gender norms or the gender discourses that are set by the society. They still have the agency to perform their own gender constructions in an active way. And there's another, although it's quite old, but it's still a very good one. So Zhuoran has found out that one of the girl that she has interviewed in one school settings, she chose to only play boy sports in the school, because she feel like that's something that only boys do. But with when she gets out of the certain context and goes back to her own neighborhood, she has changed the way how she does like sports activities. So as I mentioned, I think it is important to bring young children's perspectives or involve children into the research, because I believe first, children, they are capable of creating knowledge, and so we should treat them as knowledge constructors, and it is a right and a means for them and to get involved, sorry excuse me, to get involved in the research. And it's also a way to promoting the participation of those children and democratizing knowledge creation, because usually they usually often children are seen as less knowledgeable, but I think it's the way how we perceive them, but not necessarily how they understand what's going on around them, which I will talk later. And the second thing is, when we're trying to involve children in the research, we as researchers, we can also ask for their support or their opinions on how to design or how to build up the whole research. And it actually can, as I put here, it actually can improve the study information design. For example, if I want to do a activity with children, or I want to do a picture book reading with a group of young children, I might do some a pilot session with those children and ask them what are the books that they like, and why do they think those books in that way. And I will try to find out, is there any information that would be helpful for me to create the whole collection of the books that I'm going to use for my research in the later stage. And the second thing is, it also can help to increase study recruitment rates, because sometimes you just feel like it is hard for a adult to kind of like build the relationship or win the trust from young children, but it's easier for them to get connected with each other and make things work out among their peers. And the third one is encourage more open discussions, because as I mentioned, sometimes we tend to interpret things or interpret children's behaviors from our perspective, not their perspective. But children sometimes they do have different thoughts or opinions, but they only need a opportunity, or they need a safe space to actually to speak out their thoughts and their opinions about certain things. And finally, it also can help us. I would say that's also one of the benefits about the research design. They can actually help you to revise your research questions in a more narrowed or precise way based on the feedback that you can get from young children. And like I've listened to what Ralph mentioned about the identities issues, or the food and the culture with that is relevant to your previous experiences. So in my understanding, childhood is also something that is socially constructed, and it's not generic or universal. Apparently, like in each individual has experienced a different childhood based on their own experiences and their own living environment. What I had in my childhood could be different from my parents, and it can also be very different compared to yours. And so the ideas of children or childhood are actually closely linked to a society culture. So the way how, so for example, the way how Chinese parents, they perceive children as something that needs to be made to be more beneficial to the community is different from what from my own experiences, what parents in the Western societies has in terms of that, and it's also relevant. The constructions of childhood is also relevant to the to elements like social, political, economic, and cultural in different contexts. Like in some migration, so there are some discussions around migrations, children in migration studies, because some researchers claim that yeah, those migration children, they have better living environment because their parents, they went abroad and they sent money back to home, so those children can have a better life quality. But on the other hand, some studies have found out that those children who actually left behind or being left in their hometown are more likely to have behavioral issues or mental health issues when they grow up. So so you can see on the right side, there are some some childhood memories of mine, but I guess you guys definitely have different experiences from that. So the research method, or the framework that I'm going to use for my study is called the mosaic approach. So there are three fundamental perception of this approach. The first one is children's skills. So it believes that children are capable of communicating their thoughts and their ideas, and they are able to make sense of what's going on in their lives. And the second one is it's children's right to make their opinions and ideas about their environment and services to be heard. So which is to say that children, even though they are categorized based on the age assessment, or based on the age categorization, based on the age, they would being seen as the younger, or the younger ones. They still have the equal rights as adults to make themselves heard and make their opinions to be seen. And the final one is children's knowledge. So we often as adults think that we especially with parents, they sometimes they will say something, oh, I know my children or my child the best because I'm their parents. But actually what I believe is children, they are the center of their life, and they know what's going on in their life, and they know, and they can make sense of their life and or their experiences in their own ways. And these three principles or core perceptions about children's voices are the fundamental framework for my research. So put it in a simple way, the mosaic approach is trying to create a huge mosaic from one single tale or more multiple tales. So each research methods, or each activities will create a little tales for mapping the whole mosaic. As you can see, as you can see on the right side, there are some children doing activities outdoors, and some of them are try to draw a picture, or take a photo, or make some things like Legos and reading books. And so the ultimate goal for the mosaic approach is try to collect as much as tales of those children's lived experiences to make a huge, or make a whole piece of mosaic of their life. So the mosaic approach is actually grounded in the Reggio Emilia approach. It has a understanding which actually explain the reason why the mosaic approach works very well in terms of getting more, or getting different perspective of children's life in the research, is because it believes that children, they actually have hundreds of language, and it does not only include verbal languages. They also comes from like non-verbal languages, like the examples. They may draw something or take photos, but not necessarily to speak about their experiences through languages. And so that's why I think the mosaic approach is I would say it's a suitable approach for my research, because children who are actually experiencing the transition from of moving from one country to another country, they might often experience the uncomfortableness, or they might need a period of time to actually settle down or adjust themselves to the life in a new context. So sometimes when and I would say language is also a huge barrier for those children who are born in China, but they still are not able to speak English in fluently, or they are not able to express themselves in a foreign language. So that's why I think it is suitable for me to offer those young children more options to choose from, so they can use the one that they feel like most comfortable with, and try to express themselves in that particular way. And so my fieldwork plan is I'm going to visit each family 3 times. So for the first visit, I'm going to build up relationship with the family, especially with the children. So I've already done some piloting at the moment, and there's a little girl I did the piloting with. She's extremely energetic, and I feel like I haven't started the I haven't started any of the, I would say, the actual data collection. But the first thing I did is try to play with her, and see how she's trying to make sense of the presence of a stranger to her. And I think that is something that I should really be think about when I when I enter to the next stage to my fieldwork, because some children, they might have a preference for um, doing some like quiet reading, but some children, they are really like the girl that I had a piloting with is like she really loves to running around in the house and being really excited about doing some games with me, and we even start to build some Legos together. And suddenly, I become the mummy of her like Lego dolls. So so I think it's good for me, especially with especially in cases when I'm not quite familiar with the local culture. Uh, so it's important for me to build up a informal relationship with the children, at least so they can get familiar with my presence. And then for the next visit, I'll try to do the actual data collections with them. So for the second visit, I'm going to do a brief interview with the children's parents before I move to um, the activities with those children, because like I mentioned in the literature review part, is the family context is also a very important environment for me to understand why children make sense of things in a particular way. So and also it is important for me to see how the relationship those children might have with their parents or even with their siblings, and see how the gender discourse within the family can actually have impact on their understanding about gender. So the first thing that I'm going to do with the children is picture books reading. And the reason why I want to use picture books is I think picture books are really good tools for me to open up questions with the children. And I say there's a really good metaphor for picture books is picture books can actually act as the sliding glass door. So which means children can see themselves reflecting on the glass door, and that they may see themselves being represented in the storybooks, and that they can open the uh, glass door and then try to explore beyond the context, which means they can come up with new ideas that may not necessarily included in the picture books, and that would be a really nice opportunities to discuss um, um, topics that children might have while reading the picture books. And the second one is I'm going to ask those children to draw some paintings about their families or anything that they like, or they like about their life here in the UK or back in China. And finally, I'm going to ask them to do a house or room slash neighborhood tours with photo taking together. And after that, I'm going to ask them why you want to take this photo and why you like this thing in your room or in your house, and what do you usually do around this place here. And based on their descriptions about their lived experiences within their families or in their neighborhood, I will then can I will collect the tales from all each pieces of their descriptions, and then make the whole mosaic together at the end. Um, And for my final visit, I'm planning to finish all the activities that might have been left in the previous visit. Sorry, because I'm planning to invite them to do some outdoor activities. There might be cases when the weather is not good for a walk outside or something like that. And then after that, I will do a follow-up interviews with their parents, and I might ask them about some things or some topics or the pictures that their children have taken during the second visit, and ask about how they think about why their children make sense of things in that way, and how do they think about their life in the UK or their life in China. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zhuoran, for your very interesting presentation. I would start with a Q&A if there are no questions from the audience yet. Would like to start from the beginning, because you said Chinese people in the UK as a minority group is underrepresented. So regarding the question of gender identification or gender construction and the stereotyped understanding of gender construction, how did you manage your gender understanding from what you have experienced in China to kind of go away from this kind of understanding in a more researcher role of without having a knowledge, basically? So how do you deal with your experiences as a Chinese person versus as a researcher in UK with Chinese roots?
Mm, I would say it's inevitable for me to bring in some my own understanding about gender into the research, because I grew up within the context, and it's more like I'm inherited those conceptions about gender, like without even noticing sometimes. But for me, it's not about try to get rid of those influence from my previous experiences. It's more like try to understand how they or how my participants they make sense of their lives, and because like I think it is the same for them, because they for some of them they would brought or they would inherited some of their Chinese culture back then when they were in China, and then after they moved to the UK they might have new thoughts about gender emerged when they're having a life here in the UK. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
We also have a question
Thank you.
from Alan Schwedel. This is a very powerful research design. Your inclusion of the child taking pictures will add useful information. My question, how are you recruiting families and their children?
Oh yes. So like I mentioned at the very first beginning, I didn't come to the UK until until to 2019. So I would say the primary method for me to try to get in touch with the Chinese communities here is through my personal acquaintance. I'll try to ask my friends or any people that I know who are currently living within the UK, and ask them they knew if they know any Chinese family who have the children that I want to recruit, and let them know about my research. And I guess that's something we call like snowballing. I think it's quite a usual method to collect participants in education or social scientists. So uh, after I tell them about my research, or after I got my initial participants, I will ask those people or those initial participants, do they have any potential like participants for me, and they can recommend it. So it's like the snowball will grow in bigger and bigger. And I think that's the way that I'm going to recruit my participants.
There's an okay. Yes, I would like to add here another question because I liked what you said that you want to research with young children instead of research about children. I think it's quite a difficult or a challenging process because you always have to think about the GDPR rules, the ethical limitations that you will be dealing with or facing with. Have you thought about that now in the process of doing your field works, what kind of obstacles you might overcome or you have to overcome, or what kind of ethical limitations this research of you will bring with?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the question. So actually, I did get some feedback from the ethics board. So I would say one of the principle I need to follow is I will try to make sure that whenever I am with the children, they are both of us are under the supervision of their parents or their guardians, just in case any like emergent um, things would happen. And I would say it's a good thing for both me or children, because when there's a third person involved in this whole process, I can have a control, or I am not left alone with the children. So if anything happened between me and the children, because children, they might get evil sometimes. So um, I'm just joking. So so that's a good, I would say that's a good principle to follow, to make sure that when you are with children, um, their parents or their guardians are they can see what's going on there. And another thing is, like I said, sometimes children, they do not feel comfortable to speak out their thoughts, or it could be something to do with they're trying to adapting with the new environment, and so they might not participatory, or they seem less engaged when you are trying to talk with them, or when you are approach them. So one of the things I really need to pay attention to is the signs or the signals of withdrawal. So it's like when they are when those children, they are actually thinking about, oh, no, I don't want to do this anymore, but they do not like directly speak to you like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. They might have some behavior, like they might just drop the thing that you gave it to them, and they turn around and do not speak to you, and they're trying to play with the self and do not pay attention to you. That also could be a sign of withdraw, and saying that, but not actually saying that I do not want to participate in this activity anymore. So, yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for your important work and your attention to ethics. And for people who are not aware, that Europe is got the ERIC, um, who is looking at the ethical research protocols, and it is wise for us all to use those. As one other statement before we move on to our next presentation, uh, as Salem State professor Christopher Hudson in social work uh, recently published a book on research methods in mental health. And we know mental health is a big thing for young people as well as everyone else. Um, and I had a chapter in it, and it was fascinating to find that the majority of studies that talk about children's mental health or their activities come from parents or teachers or other adults, that they're not talking to the children directly. And especially if you have been an abused child, you can be assured that that data will be incorrect because the parents will say, oh, no, everything's fine. But that may not be what the child sees at all. So I think that providing them the confidence and the autonomy and independence to have a voice, we are looking again at this theme of agency and participation, and that you're honoring that. And it was wonderful, your work, and I can't wait to read more of it. And Ralph, you're a super moderator, right, as well as
Thank you. Thank
so
you.
thank you both so much.